It started like any other Monday morning. Cold, polished, indifferent. The 23rd floor of a Lander Equity buzzed with tailored suits, clinking espresso cups, and the kind of fake smiles that masked brutal ambition. No one noticed the black woman quietly mopping the marble floor just outside the glass boardroom. No one cared that her hands were calloused, her knuckles swollen from years of work most folks would never lower themselves to do. No one noticed her name tag, A. Monroe. Angela Monroe had worked in that building for 5 months. Same uniform, same late hours, same invisible presence. She moved with grace, quiet but not meek. Every time her mop touched the floor, she looked at the people behind the glass, faces that once sat across her in much different rooms. But they didn't recognize her. And that was fine, because she wasn't there to be seen. Not yet. Inside that boardroom, CEO Brandon Mercer was on his usual morning rampage. He was in his prime, mid-40s, Harvard tie still knotted from 15 years ago, loud, white, and addicted to the sound of his own voice. His ego walked 2 steps ahead of him. "Let's make this clear," Brandon barked, pacing. "This is my company. I built this from the ground up while the rest of you were sucking on silver spoons. So, if I say we're cutting departments, we're cutting departments. Starting with janitorial." There were polite nods. One board member, a black woman named Sandra, shifted uncomfortably but stayed quiet. Then it happened. Angela stepped into the boardroom to clean a spilled cup of coffee near the conference table. She hadn't said a word. She didn't have to. Brandon's eyes found her and twisted into a sneer. "Are you serious right now?" he snapped. "Can we get some actual professionalism in this building?" Angela stopped mid-wipe, looked up slowly, and met his eyes. "This is a private meeting," he barked louder. "Can't you see we're in the middle of something important? Go sweep somewhere else." A few chuckles. The room shrunk with silent shame. Angela didn't flinch. She stood, adjusted her mop, and walked out with her head high. Not a word. Sandra looked down at her notepad. The janitor had more dignity than anyone else in the room. Later that afternoon, the board gathered again. This time for a surprise quarterly presentation Brandon had skipped his golf game to prepare for. He stood at the head of the table, pointing lasers at charts, bragging about acquisitions, cost-cutting measures, and streamlining dead weight. Then the door opened. Angela walked in, not in her uniform. No mop, no gloves. She wore a black tailored suit, minimal jewelry, her natural curls pinned back elegantly. Her presence was quiet but commanding. A few board members furrowed their brows, confused. Brandon blinked. Who let the cleaning lady back in here?" No one answered. Angela walked to the empty chair across from him. "Saturday," folded her hands. Brandon slammed his hand on the table. "Security. She's on the agenda," Sandra interrupted, her voice crisp. "Item 4. Update from the silent partner." Brandon froze. "What?" Angela smiled. "Let me reintroduce myself," she said, voice clear as a bell. "Angela Monroe, founder of Haven Capital. We bought 27% of a Lander Equity 6 months ago under a holding firm you apparently never looked into." The room fell into a stunned silence. "I've been watching operations quietly. From within. I wanted to see the culture before stepping in officially." Brandon's jaw moved, but nothing came out. Angela kept going. "And what I saw," she paused, letting the moment breathe, "is a leadership culture built on arrogance, intimidation, and disrespect." She leaned forward, eyes burning into Brandon's. "You belittled staff. You cut corners. You mocked the very people who kept this building running, including me. And while you were too busy yelling, I was reviewing the books you ignored." She tossed a folder on the table. Pages spilled out, emails, financial reports, HR complaints. "Brandon, your days of unchecked power are over." He lurched forward. "You can't do this. I built this company." "You inherited it from a dying firm and ran it like a frat house," Angela replied. "Haven Capital's board has already motioned to have you removed." Sandra stood, effective immediately. Security entered silently. This time for him. Brandon stammered, red-faced and wide-eyed. "You're replacing me with a janitor?" Angela stood as he was escorted out. She didn't smirk. She didn't gloat. She just whispered, "A woman you didn't even bother to look in the eye." The boardroom was dead quiet. Angela took her place at the head of the table. "I'm not here to play savior," she said, looking at each of them. "But this company will no longer reward cruelty disguised as leadership. There's a difference between being strong and being a bully. If you can't see that, I suggest you resign now." No one moved. Sandra nodded slowly, a subtle smile tugging her lips. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Monroe." Angela exhaled deeply. The weight of years finally began to lift. But she wasn't done. Not even close. As she packed her files to leave, her assistant handed her a phone. "There's been movement on the Olander real estate scandal," the assistant whispered. "You were right. Offshore laundering. Brandon wasn't working alone." Angela narrowed her eyes. "Good. Let's burn the rest of the rot." She walked out, heels clicking down the same hallway she once mopped. Downstairs, the night shift was starting. A young black man in a janitor's uniform held the door for her. "Evening, ma'am," he said shyly. Angela stopped. "What's your name?" she asked warmly. "Deshawn. First week on the job." She handed him her card. "Keep doing what you're doing. And when you're ready, I have a seat waiting at the table upstairs." He looked down at the card, stunned. Angela turned and walked into the night, the skyline glowing behind her. But as she disappeared into her Blacktown car, she didn't see the shadow watching her from across the street. A man in a dark coat. Eyes narrowed. Phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah," the man said into the phone. "She's onto it. We have a problem." It had only been 3 days since Angela Monroe took control of Olander Equity, and already, the silence had grown loud. Not the silence of indifference. No, that was Brandon Mercer's trademark, but the kind that meant people were finally listening. Watching. Waiting. But Angela didn't come for applause. She came for accountability. In her new office, once Brandon's sanctum of ego and leather-bound bravado, Angela sat at the desk with 2 cups of coffee, one for her, one for her conscience. She stared out the glass window as downtown vibrated with the hustle of a city that rarely looked up. Below, people like her were sweeping floors, cleaning restrooms, and making boardrooms sparkle, unseen, undervalued. Until now, her phone buzzed. "Sandra." "They tried to wipe the server," Sandra said, her voice low. "Whoever was helping Brandon, they're still inside. IT traced a breach attempt last night. An encrypted email was sent to an offshore account in the Caymans. It used board-level credentials." Angela's heart didn't race. It simmered. "Who else has access?" she asked. "Only 5 people." Angela didn't need names. She already knew. "Call a closed-door meeting. No phones. No laptops. I want eyes on everyone." That afternoon, the conference room felt colder. Angela sat at the head, flanked by Sandra and a forensic accountant from Haven Capital named Maya Delgado, a Latina powerhouse with a photographic memory and zero tolerance for bullshit. Across from them sat the suspects. Harris, the CFO who played dumb too well. Drayton, the smug VP of acquisitions who always arrived smelling like expensive guilt. Catherine, head of HR with eyes like still water. And Bennett, Brandon's old protege, a man too polished to ever be clean. Angela didn't waste time. "We've discovered a network of falsified vendor payments and shell company invoices dating back 2 years, Maya began. Payments were approved with dual authentication from inside this board. The room stiffened. Angela tossed a printed spreadsheet on the table. The same account was used to pay off a real estate bribe tied to a zoning deal in South Bronx. That housing project was supposed to provide low-income units. Instead, it was flipped to condos 2 weeks after construction started. Someone in this room made that happen. Catherine fumbled with her pen. Angela clocked it. "Would anyone like to speak before we proceed with formal indictments and public disclosures?" Silence. Angela stood. I expected fear. I expected lies. But what I didn't expect was how easy it would be to trace greed when you think no one's watching the janitor. She turned to Maya. "Release the findings to the SEC. Let's see who runs." As they left, Bennett stayed behind. "I didn't know," he said, voice lower. "Brandon kept me out of the real stuff. But there's someone else pulling strings. Someone way above his level." Angela didn't blink. "Names." Bennett hesitated. "There's a trust fund, registered under an alias. It's tied to someone in politics. Someone with enough pull to shut this whole thing down if we go too fast." Angela's eyes narrowed. "Who?" Bennett slid a paper across the table. "Just a name." Angela read it once. Then again. Her stomach dropped. It wasn't a stranger. It was Congressman Ellis J. Whitford, chair of the House Committee on Financial Regulation. A man who'd once publicly endorsed Haven Capital. A man who attended Angela's father's funeral and called her the future of black enterprise. The betrayal was almost poetic. That night, Angela sat alone in her office. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The city felt smaller. She stared at the name again, fingers clenched into a fist. The more she looked at it, the more memories rose. Dinners where he gave her advice, moments when he spoke of justice like it was currency he actually believed in. And all this time, he was laundering the very hope she was trying to restore. Her phone buzzed. A private number. She answered. A deep voice spoke slowly. "You're getting close to something dangerous, Angela. I suggest you stop, before you end up like your father." Silence. Then the line went dead. Angela's breath caught. Her father had died of a heart attack, or so they'd said. But now there were cracks in the truth. And the moment she put the phone down, a notification lit up on her screen. A video. No sender. She hesitated, then clicked. Grainy footage. A boardroom. Her father, younger, sitting at a table. Across from him, Whitford. Another man entered. Brandon Mercer. Voices were muffled, but the body language said everything. Papers slammed. Finger pointing. Then, her father stood, trembling with anger. Turned to walk out. The last frame showed a security guard blocking the door. Angela stared, frozen. Below the video, a single message appeared. "Your father didn't die from stress. He died because he said no." Angela rose slowly. She walked to the window again, watching the city blur in the rain. There was no going back now. The game wasn't just corporate. It was political, generational, and bloody. She picked up her phone, dialed Maya. "We're not just exposing Brandon anymore," she said. "We're going after Whitford. Every shell account, every ghost donor, every lie." Maya's voice shook. "That'll put a target on you." Angela looked at the reflection in the glass. Herself, hardened now. Not broken. Evolved. "Then let them aim," she said. But before she could hang up, her office lights flickered. Then the power cut out. Her screen went black. A soft knock tapped twice on her office door. She turned, slowly. Another knock. Then a voice from behind the door whispered, "You weren't supposed to survive." Angela didn't move. The office was swallowed in darkness, the only light leaking from the city skyline behind her. The knock came again, firmer this time. The voice was gone, but the weight of it lingered in the air like smoke from a long-dead fire. She took a breath, stepped forward, unlocked the door. It creaked open slowly, but there was no one there. Only a white envelope on the floor. She picked it up, fingers steady. Inside, a single USB drive. No note, no signature. Angela closed the door, locked it, plugged the drive into her encrypted terminal. As the screen flickered back to life, Maya's face appeared on a secure call. "I just got booted out of the system," Maya said, panicked. "Someone's jamming our firewall from inside the building." Angela nodded toward the screen. "I think I've got our countermeasure." The USB drive launched a hidden folder. Hundreds of documents, audio files, wire transfers, surveillance, a buried archive of over 15 years of evidence, blackmail, political deals, corporate kickbacks, names, dates, account numbers. And her father. A recording file was marked Monroe_2009_final. Angela clicked. Her father's voice crackled through the speaker. Calm. Controlled. "This is Robert Monroe. If you're hearing this, it means I never made it out of that room. Brandon Mercer is a pawn. The real power is Ellis Whitford. He approached me in 2004. Wanted Haven Capital to help cover their tracks through philanthropic fronts. I refused. That's when the threats began." The tape continued, heavy with sorrow. "If anything happens to me, promise me you'll remember this. The system isn't broken. It's designed exactly this way. But the people they step on, we remember. We see it all, from the ground up." Angela wiped a tear away with the back of her hand. Her chest tightened. Not from grief. She'd mourned her father years ago. This was fury. This was truth. And now she had everything. The next morning, Angela called an emergency press conference in the lobby of Olander Equity. No press releases. No PR handlers. Just raw truth. The media poured in, local, national, international. Everyone wanted to see the janitor turned CEO who had fired a billionaire and flipped a company upside down. Angela stepped up to the podium. No teleprompter, just fire in her voice. "I'm not here to manage a company," she began. "I'm here to rebuild a system." Murmurs spread. Cameras clicked. "I stand before you not as a CEO, but as a daughter. My father, Robert Monroe, founded Haven Capital to empower the underrepresented. He died fighting to expose corruption masked as capitalism. She raised the USB drive. This contains evidence linking Congressman Ellis Whitford to over a dozen financial crimes, including bribery, laundering, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Starting today, we're turning it over to the FBI and every investigative journalist who still remembers what the truth looks like. Gasps, flashes, questions shouted. But Angela wasn't done. To every janitor who's been silenced, every intern who's been mocked, every woman who's been told to stay quiet, this is your mic. A roar of applause broke out. And somewhere in the back, Deshawn, the young janitor she once encouraged, stood still, eyes wide, watching her become everything she said she would be. Angela stepped away from the podium, but not before locking eyes with a tall man near the rear exit. Ellis Whitford, flanked by two security men, dressed in a tailored gray suit and dead calm smile. He didn't blink, didn't flinch, just raised his hand slightly in a mock salute, then disappeared into the crowd. 2 weeks passed. The FBI raid on Whitford's estate made headlines. Multiple indictments followed. Campaign accounts frozen. Offshore properties seized. His face plastered on every screen across America. But what wasn't on the news? Angela's home was broken into twice. No fingerprints. No cameras. No leads. Maya's car was tampered with. Sandra received death threats. The deeper they dug, the more rot they found. And it was starting to fight back. One night, Angela returned to her apartment to find the door slightly ajar. Inside, nothing was stolen. Except one thing. Her father's journal. Left behind was a photo on the kitchen counter. An old black and white snapshot of her father standing beside a man she didn't recognize. On the back, written in hurried script, he was the first, before Whitford, and he's still alive. Angela stared at the note. If Whitford wasn't the origin, then the rabbit hole hadn't ended. It had just begun. She turned the photo over again and again. The man's face burned into her mind. Older, smiling, but there was something in the eyes. A darkness, a knowing. Her phone buzzed. An unknown number again. A text message. If you want to know how deep it goes, meet me at the old 39th Street Library. Midnight. Come alone. Angela exhaled slowly. The world finally knew what Whitford did. But there was still someone hiding in the shadows. The architect behind it all. She tucked the photo into her coat pocket, stepped out into the cold night, and walked toward the truth. The end.